Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Blake Bailey. This is my good friend here, Russell Thurman.
Hello.
And this is my first podcast. So, a lot of my blogs that you've read, all two of you, have been about the CGI and practical effects use in movies. In this video we'll be discussing the CGI use and the lack of practical effects in The Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug. Or Smaug. Whatever floats your boat. And so, you know, obviously this is another one of Peter Jackson's great films. You know, he never fails to entertain and inspire us. But this movie, a lot of people have been talking about the CGI use has been really distracting. And he's strayed away from the practical effects use. I remember in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy that you know, like all the orcs, for example, those were all people, except for like the large-scale combat scenes. Those were all people in costumes and makeup, and it really helped suspend our disbelief. And in the first Hobbit, it wasn't that big of an issue, but in this movie, it seems like there's a lot more CGI where he could have just had people.
Also, very low quality. I mean, I just noticed, all these scenes where it was like, oh, hey, this is just animation, like CGI.
What in particular you were looking at? You're just like, oh, that looks a little bit off.
A lot of the forest scenes, especially when they were first entering the forest.
The forest where you're in it and it starts, you know, casting illusion on you, and there's spiders in there and stuff.
Yeah, the Mirkwood, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
When they first started entering that, there was this aerial shot that kind of went above the forest, and also a side shot of all the dwarves looking into the forest, and it just looked so very, very... just,
not realistic.
Yeah, I mean, just you could tell that this was like an animation.
Mm-hmm.
And it just took me out of it.
There were several scenes that took me out of it, and took us out of it. One of which didn't have much to do with CGI, but just the quality of the camera that they were using.
Oh, yeah.
There's a scene where the hobbits are in these barrels, and they're riding down this river, escaping the orcs. And there'll be a couple moments where the camera's coming out of the water for a dramatic effect, and it looks like they're using a Kodak camera. It's very distracting. It's a very low quality. But that's not what we're going to be talking about. There's a lot of other really distracting CGI scenes in this movie. One of which I remember taking me out of it when I was watching in the theaters. They're in the town that they go to, and the dudes running the town like a mayor, and not Orlando Bloom is in there. It's like a river.
It was like, yeah, called Riverwood or something.
It's called Lake Town. They're in Lake Town with the guy that looks like Orlando Bloom, that's not actually Orlando Bloom. And it's near the end of the movie, and it's Legolas, and he's fighting all these orcs, who again are mostly CGI, when they could have had people in costume do that. Would have really helped suspend my disbelief. And there's a scene where the not pale orc, his accomplice, is riding a warg, and he's riding out of Lake Town, and Legolas is chasing after him on a horse. And they both, the warg obviously has to be CGI. You know, those are endangered animals. Those are hard to get a hold of these days. But the pale orc's general, Legolas, and Legolas's horse were all CGI, and they're racing out of the town, and it's just like, why not just get a horse?
It's quite obvious, because the horse, if you look at a real horse, it's not very smooth. You see all the muscle contractions. Well, yeah, or you'll see swaying and bobbing, but with CGI horses and like animated horses, it's very smooth and quick, and you can easily tell that they're both CGI. And additionally, there's as you see them riding off, you'll see a low angle shots of, you see Legolas's face with the with part of the bridge he's on going above him, and
right, kind of like an undershot.
Yeah, low angle shot, and you can tell that that's actually like green screen or something on.
Yeah, they couldn't just build the pillars or the bridge. Like Peter Jackson, he's made huge sets before, and I don't know why. I think maybe a lot of the budget went to Smaug.
Yeah, probably. Like all the CGI is Smaug.
And that we'll get to that in a minute. What the good CGI use. Another gripe about using CGI over practical effects is just there's the same scene where all the dwarves are in the barrels running down the river. There was a lot of orcs, and they're swarming the elven castle town.
Well, they're just swarming like just like a little
hillside.
There's a gate house, they just kind of ambush
like a fortress, a fort. And all the orcs there were CGI.
Well, all the orcs like in the entire movie were CGI.
He uses.
Were they all CGI?
In the Hobbit?
Yeah. All the orcs.
I think, yeah, they probably all are in the movie.
And I mean,
that's his point.
You can tell some of the elves were also CGI once they were being attacked by the CGI orcs.
Oh yeah.
And
intrinsically, you know CGI is fake. You can always tell what's real and what's not. I've never been fooled by CGI. There's never been a CGI monster or landscape, and I've just thought to myself like, wow, that looks real. It looks like real life. I think it's like human nature. You always know what's computer generated and what's not. And that's not always a bad thing. Like, looking at Smaug, he was an amazing looking dragon. He looked absolutely fantastic. But I know that dragon's fake. And say, when you have people in costume or makeup or the use of puppetry, those are tangible things. You can touch those things. Those can actually physically interact with people and objects. Like the first Alien movie and the Aliens movies. Those actually scared me. That actually, for a split second, my brain would say like, whoa, those are real. Because those are real. And that's what made the original Lord of the Rings trilogy so magical. Because you have all those orcs in costume and makeup, and it really helps suspend your disbelief because you really felt like you're in a different world at that point. And in this movie, when they do away with a lot of the practical effects, it's a lot harder for you to get synced into this world. And I wish they would get more actors, get more makeup, get more costumes for scenes that could have easily, handled that. Like all the orcs attacking the
I would
orcs.
assume they have the budget.
But you would think, wouldn't CGI cost more?
Then like 30, 40 actors, maybe 100
of side people.
I don't know.
There's another part of the movie that, aside from what practical effects could have done over CGI, there's just bad CGI, and Russell's going to talk about that.
It was this big scene with the gold.
They're in the old kingdom,
the Dwarven mines, and
Smaug's taken over.
They activate the Dwarven forges that are filled with all this molten gold, or that now is they're now filled with molten gold, and you see the gold, and it looks off. I mean, I couldn't really tell what was wrong when I was watching the movie, but I kind of realized after I reminded myself what actual molten gold looks like. The problem in the movie was the fact that the molten gold reflected everything. You could see the reflection of everything, and that's not really how molten gold looks like. It looks more just bright and hurts your eyes to look at.
Yeah.
Additionally, when one of the dwarves was riding on the stream of molten gold,
he's in like this wheelbarrow.
Yeah, and there's absolutely no wake on the little river of gold. He's kind of just floating on it. There's no trail of gold at all. There's no wake. There's no.
Now one could argue that he's going the same speed as the river, but
there would still be a
little bit of ripple.
You would see the stuff pushing onto it, but yeah. I don't know.
And the gold in this movie, very liquidy. It was very. It almost had like the consistency of water, and real molten gold. It's very thick. It's like you're pouring.
I don't know. I think it's
magma level hot maple syrup.
I think it's actually pretty. I don't think it's that thick. Not like syrup thick, but.
Well, you're the smart one, so.
I don't think it's that thick. I think you could ride on it theoretically, but he also had. I assume that wheelbarrow is. is metal, and so therefore you can't really ride on that for very long until.
Yeah, you think Thorin would be like, oh, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
What was good about the CGI? Because
we already discussed Smaug.
Smaug looks amazing.
Lake Town looked really good.
I noticed in all of the Tolkien universe, he'll have a couple of like actual setups of like homes or buildings or pillars, and then all the background will be CGI. It's pretty common practice.
Yeah, that's typically what.
But it looks so good. It's so, it really immerses you in the experience, and it's either bad if you look at the environments aside from the set, because you're either like, oh wow, that looks kind of funky, or it's also good if you're looking at the environments in the background, because you're like, wow, this looks so good. And the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films have always done a really good job of just making the world look so amazing. And even scenes when Gandalf's like scaling a mountain, and you actually think like, wow, did they get Ian McKellen and just like, all right, just go climb it, you can handle it.
Let's climb a few mountains and then.
Yeah, there's a lot of it. Joey's here! Yay! He's our other roommate. Joey. You saw The Hobbit.
Yes.
Desolation of Smaug. How do you feel about Smaug? How do you think the dragon looked?
It looks really good.
Looks really good.
Yes.
How do you feel about all the orcs in the movie?
Don't know.
So Joey, how did you feel about the CGI in The Hobbit? Like specific examples, how did you feel about Smaug, the dragon?
Smaug looks really good. The voice acting is really good.
Yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch did a great job.
Yes, and I like the jaw.
Yeah. Smaug was definitely just the best part of the movie in terms of CGI. How do you feel about the orcs in the movie? Do you like that they're all becoming CGI, or would you like to see more practical effects, people in costumes and makeup?
Maybe more practical effects.
You like more practical effects?
Yes. Like part CG and part practical, not all CG.
Right. Have some diversity in there. How did you feel about the molten gold scene?
It looks kind of fake.
You think it looks kind of fake too?
Yes. It looks like water,
Right, it had really weird. It wasn't thick. It wasn't metal.
Yeah, it looks very low concentrated, just like water.
We got two smart guys here.
Yeah.
I'm just in the middle. I'm not sure if you remember the scene where Legolas is riding off on the horse, and they got Legolas and his horse to be CGI when they could have just got Legolas on a horse riding away. Do you think that Peter Jackson uses too much CGI nowadays?
Yes.
Nowadays, this is just his latest movie. Hopefully, maybe The Hobbit 3 will be better, but we don't know.
We don't want Peter Jackson going down the George Lucas route. There's been a movie made about George Lucas. It's called The Fans vs. George Lucas. So we don't want that to happen. Anything else? Can you think of anything else, Joy?
No. I'm good.
Alright. Well, this has been my friend Russell. This has been my friend Joey. And this is my first podcast.
Have a nice day.
You don't have to if you don't want to.